Before trust, after trust. So I'm 54 years old, I believe, somewhere around there. And if I do the math quickly, it's not something I keep in the top front of my mind every day. Maybe I should, I don't know. But anyway, be that as it may, I believe that decades and even perhaps centuries from now, we're going to look at the coronavirus and if there's additional viruses in the future, because we've had SARS and MERS and, pandemics throughout history, but they seem to be increasing in frequency, perhaps, that it'll be recognized as a before trust and an after trust period, with the coronavirus or another virus being the instigator of that. I want to talk about that a little bit. Obviously, you can't, while you're in a crisis, know what the historical context is going to be, but in those 54 years, I believe that the coronavirus is the most important factor, potentially, of anything that I've witnessed. I mean, I've lived through the internet, the rise of artificial intelligence, Vietnam War, civil rights movement. I mean, all of those things are monumental factors. 9/11, the financial crisis, the NASDAQ crisis, the 87 crash. But I want to talk a little bit about why I think that the coronavirus is going to be more impactful than that, because all those things were temporary setbacks. I mean, 9/11 is the one that comes closest, I think, because that was actually a change in consciousness, a change in perception. We viewed the world as safer, and then after 9/11, we viewed it as less safe. But I think coronavirus is in that same vein because, the world seems much less safe. And now it doesn't just seem less safe from terrorists like it did at 9/11. Now it seems less safe from everybody. I mean, I see people all over the place, and maybe for good reason. It's an individual decision, walk on the other side of the street, not just 6 feet apart, but 50 feet apart from everyone else. I mean, now it's like we're not just afraid of terrorists, we're afraid of everybody. Everybody is a threat to our physical, well-being because of the coronavirus. And I don't think that's going to subside. I think it might subside a little bit, but, this is really a landmark or seminal event because, the coronavirus is going to come back in different waves. I mean, it might be less thing, but, this is going to be such an impact that it's going to stay in our consciousness. And I think that, if you just even look at the grocery stores, I live in North Carolina, which has has less than 1,000 people that's died altogether, I believe, maybe around 1,000, as compared to some places that have much, much more, because North Carolina is quite a populous state. But almost everyone's wearing masks. I mean, that's probably a good thing. It's just it's just the consciousness and the just the way people talk to each other, the way people kind of avoid each other. I think that there's a couple of countervailing forces also, because as a species, we were hardwired for cooperation and social beings, because, like in the caveman days, if you were cut off from the tribe, you would die, literally, because, people hunted in groups. And I think it's kind of interesting to see like what the forces and the countervailing forces, which is going to be stronger. Are people going to be more afraid to like associate with other people because of the coronavirus? Or they're going to be more afraid to like be in isolation and that, we can't survive and thrive without other people. Because like I said, social stigma, I mean, that's why social media hurts so bad when people get rejected or whatever, or, if someone in your family doesn't like you or says something mean to you, like I said, we're incredible societal beings. So I think that a couple other things that I want to expand on a little bit. One is kind of like the long-term, benefits of this. Not benefits, consequences. And I don't mean consequences in terms of punishment. I mean consequences in terms of outcome. There's a few different things that come to mind, and some of them relate to the trust and before trust and after trust, and some of them is like a little bit different. So the first thing is that I think we're going to have continued social distancing. I think people are going to be wary of coming in contact with other people. And I think that's going to fundamentally change our world. I think technology is going to become much, much, much more important. See, even 6 months ago, people were talking about breaking up Facebook because, of Cambridge Analytica and things like that. And, really limiting the powers of some of the tech giants. But what's happening now is that the income gap and the technology gap is becoming bigger, bigger, bigger than ever. And there's a couple different reasons for it. One is that people are turning more to technology because we used to rely on people, now we rely on technology. So we're not going into the office, we're not going into meetings, to solve problems face to face. We're relying on Zoom, and we're relying on Facebook, Portal, and we're relying on Google, and we're relying on different kinds of technology. There's a trend. This is going to result in the increased use of drones. People don't want other people delivering their food or even touching their food. That's why they're going to automated kitchens where the food isn't even touched by humans; it's just touched by machines. So the idea is that we used to think that automation was a bad thing because, we looked at the humanity factor. And I think there's still a divide on this, but people are increasingly saying humans are bad, machines are good. If a human touches something, it could catch a disease. If a machine touches it, if a machine delivers it to you, if we have autonomous vehicles that drive the thing to you rather than a human driver. I know people that won't order delivery because they don't want a human driver to touch the food. Not that they actually touch the food, but they handle the packaging. They don't want to have to open the door to the. This is crazy, crazy stuff. I'm not saying that's good or bad mentality. Everyone has to decide this for themselves, but it's a fundamental change of before trust and after trust. So technology used to be like an aid to humans, like we would use things to make things more human-like. And I think it's crossed a tipping point where technology is actually making things less human-like. So it's like we're trying to take the humanness out of the equation. We're trying to make things more efficient. We're trying to make things more sterile. So I think that's one major change is the technology is just becoming more and more and more important. And I think the income inequality, like every time there's a crisis, the businesses get bailed out more than the individuals. Like the individuals got a $1,200 check, one of them, and unemployment went up, and I think even food stamps might go up. Those are kind of things just around the edges. We did give money to hospitals, but it's everything is geared towards businesses, large businesses and small businesses, but increasingly large businesses because it's not only the direct funds and these PPP programs and the direct things to the large companies, like the bailouts are massive, but it's also the Fed's action of quantitative easing. Like the Fed's is opening up more and more money to the banks and actually buying distressed assets. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know quantitative easing from most studies or what people say really puts income inequality on steroids because it funnels like all the money towards the rich in terms of buying these assets. And not only that, some people say it's socialism for the rich because the rich get bailed out, but it's capitalism for the poor because the bills still have to be paid. Like this money that the Fed gives, it's not just like it is created out of thin air, but it has to be repaid. And it goes on our national debt. So the consumers have to pay for it. So your children and my children, well, I don't have kids, but your children and, your grandchildren and, they're going to have to pay for this. So like, again, some people say it's socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor because we don't have a choice whether we have to pay for this. First of all, the first order effect is that the majority of the money goes to the rich. And the second order effect is that all this money that goes to the rich, we have to pay for. We don't have to pay for it today. We have to pay for it over time. So the fact that we have to pay for it over time means that the interest is accruing. And so we're going to have to pay for it, perhaps multiple times over. So let's see if I can think of other effects of this. I think that, when things become depersonalized, like what do we favor? Technology over humanity, then I think is like, for example, it's easier to go to war. It's easier to do scapegoating. It's easier to do immigration cutoff because everything that results in dehumanization, whether it be the trust factor or whether it be like putting technology as more important than humans. Like I'm in the technology field, so I love technology, but I think technology should always be an aid to humans. I think humanity comes first. I think technology comes second. I think when people are always talking on their phones and they don't want to talk to people live, you even when they're having dinner, they're just a lot of people just looking on their phones and not even talking to each other. People don't like to go on dates; they just like to go on internet dates, or whatever the case might be. I mean, I'm not an expert in that area, but I think that a lot of these factors have a lot of secondary effects, and then some of the other secondary or even tertiary effects is that the financial markets that biology is going to become much more important. Like the humanities, like art, English, literature, languages, those things are going to become less important because we're interacting less with each other, and things like computer science, robotics, artificial intelligence, those are going to become more important. And in the stock market, people are going to be investing in biotech companies, and this could lead to enhanced interest in gene editing. It used to be that when the humans came first, we were more respectful maybe of Mother Nature. We didn't want to play around with these things. But now that like technology has become almost like a god in its own right, we're more willing to tinker with this and tinker with that. So I think like it affects quite a few different areas.